What is up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the Numbers. This is my full card breakdown and prediction video for UFC 292. We got Aljamain Sterling going against Sean O'Malley.
I need all the wins, yeah. Harder than all that is. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out.
And we are back for another full card breakdown and prediction video. This week we are breaking down a very good card in UFC 292, headlined by Aljamain Sterling going against Sean O'Malley for the bantamweight title. And then the co-main event is a strawweight title fight between Zhang Weili and Lemos, which is going to be absolute fireworks. I'm really looking forward to this card. Before we get into it, if you guys can please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. If you have not already, going to be putting a ton of content throughout the week. We got DWCS week 2 coming up. We have this card coming up, lots of betting content, DraftKings content, you name it. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on all of that. A couple of announcements before we get into it. The first one is, so the Ultimate Fighter finale is going to be on this card. They're going to have 2 fights. It's going to be the lightweight fight and the bantamweight fight. So the problem I'm having is I have all the research done. I want to get this video out, but they're probably not going to announce the bantamweight matchup until like Tuesday night, and there's no way I'm getting my video out on a Wednesday. So I'll be touching on these Ultimate Fighter finale fights on Friday on my live stream if anybody cares. Me personally, I could care less about Austin Hubbard versus Kurt Holloway, and I could also care less about Brad Katona, but maybe people are really looking forward to those matchups. I'll touch on them. I'll break them down Friday, but I wanted to get this video out as soon as possible because all the work's done, so might as well get it out. So other than that, I do want to shout out DFSbythenumbers.com. Now is a great time to check it out and sign up, especially with Dana White's Contender Series coming on. I added it down to the bottom there, the Dana White's Contender Series betting breakdown video. Along with that, I'm actually posting all my fighter notes for Dana White's Contender Series, and I'm doing a best bet article for Dana White's Contender Series. Of course, I'll do the breakdown, and that'll be out on Monday for everybody. But if you want to support me more, or if you do want extra content, now is like the best time ever to sign up because I'm just pumping out so much content onto the website between UFC. We're in a 17-week stretch, and then on top of that, the Dana White's Contender Series. So yeah, check that out. I do have 2 bets already for 292, 2 pretty big bets. I'm already 5 units deep on this card, and I think it's a very good betting card nonetheless. So other than that, it is a pay-per-view card, so we're going to be bringing back the Significant Strike contest. Last pay-per-view, nobody was really close at all in the Poirier-Gaethje fight. But maybe, somebody will get it here. Aljamain Sterling, Sean O'Malley, comment down how many significant strikes you think that these two are going to combine for in the main event. $25 to first. If there is a tie, the tiebreaker does go to the person that did comment first. So comment down your significant strikes. We'll see if anybody can hit it on the dot. I think it's been a while since somebody's hit it on the dot there. So other than that, going to be going live Friday for some final thoughts, and then live once again Saturday for some best bet. I have a stacked best bet panel for you guys Saturday as well. So I say we get into it, and we're going to start with the first fight on the card, and we're going to touch on Natalia Silva going against Andrea Lee. And this bout order obviously is very much subject to change, just due to the fact that they typically change it around quite a bit throughout the week, and obviously this video is coming out very early, so this bout order is most definitely going to change. But we got Natalia Silva. She is 26 years old, 5'4", with a 67-inch reach, 5-1, and 5-0 in her last 5 fights. Andrea Lee, 34 years old, 5'6", with a 69.5-inch reach, 13-7, and 2-3 in her last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds. We see that Natalia Silva opened up -300. She is currently -350. And then Andrea Lee opened up -250. She's currently +285. And, these odds, really concern me because, I was, researching this fight, and I think it could be a lot closer than this line does indicate, because Andrea Lee, she's somebody that is very underrated. I think she has a great skill set. On the feet, her striking is very good volume. She has really good offensive wrestling. Defensive wrestling's not great. She can be taken down. But I think this fight, in terms of the numbers, is going to be very close. I think Andrea Lee can definitely compete in terms of the volume. The reason I do have to lean to the Natalia Silva side, and no way would I play her at -350, would just be because, she's going to be landing the much harder shots. Andrea Lee, yes, she has volume. She just doesn't have a ton of power, whereas Natalia Silva, when she's landing, it's all power. I mean, she is a very, very powerful striker. And on top of that, in terms of the wrestling, like, is Andrea Lee going to be able to take down Natalia Silva, who quite frankly looks like she has elite takedown defense? So I actually think if there's takedowns in this matchup, maybe Lee gets a couple here or there, but I actually think Silva's very live to get takedowns as well, just because Andrea Lee's takedown defense is around like 50%. It's not great. So yeah, I think this fight could very well play out closer than this line does indicate, but this is a prediction show, and I'm making a prediction, and at the end of the day, I think Natalia Silva does get her hand raised. I think this fight does go the distance, and I think, her landing the bigger shots, could be enough to win this fight, and like I said, mixing in takedowns here or there. I actually feel like this could look a lot like the Barber fight, where, Lee was mixing in takedowns against Barber, but on the feet, Barber was just landing big shots, and I didn't like how Lee was really reacting to those big shots as well. On top of that, Natalia Silva has, pretty much all the finish upside if there's a finish in this matchup at all. So give me Natalia Silva, wild line, but I'm going to take her to win this fight by decision. Moving on, we have a very fun fight here. We got Karine Silva. By the way, look at that afro on Karine Silva. I mean, you have to be a very good fighter to rock something like that. But she's taking on Maryna Moroz. Karine Silva is 29 years old, 5'5", with a 67-inch reach, 16-4, and 5-0 in her last 5 fights. Maryna Moroz, 31 years old, 5'7", with a 67-inch reach, 11-4, and 2-3 in her last 5 fights. So Karine Silva actually opened up plus 115. She is currently minus 165 fave. And Maryna Moroz opened up a minus 135 favorite, and she's currently sitting at plus 145. So, yeah, I think this fight is, I think it's very close on paper, but I think the winner of this fight is going to probably look like a massive favorite, because I think somebody's probably getting finished in this matchup. Karine Silva, 20 fights, 19 of which have finished inside the distance. She is a kill or be killed fighter. On the feet, Karine Silva is very, very dangerous. She has power. And then on the mat, her submission game is top-notch. She's super dangerous when it hits the ground. So these fighters have actually fought each other before. It was a while ago. Like, I want to say, like 8 years ago, like that long ago when these two fought. And Maryna Moroz did win this fight. Did win the first fight by submission. And in terms of this matchup, it's quite interesting, actually, because Maryna Moroz, she has 15 fights. She's never been finished. She is very, very tough, never been knocked out, never been submitted. Is Karine Silva going to be the first person to go out there and finish Maryna Moroz? Potentially. I mean, Karine Silva's no joke on the mat, but my concern with Karine Silva is I don't think her cardio is that great. I remember going back and watching her fight on the Contender Series where, first off, she got dominated in that fight for the most part. She got taken down. She was stuck on her back. She was losing minutes. The second round starts, and she looks tired. She looks exhausted. She's not used to going deep into fights. And, luckily she was able to find a guillotine and finish that fight. But, if she slows down against Maryna Moroz, I don't think, Maryna Moroz is going to let her off the hook at all. So I think Silva's going to have a lot of opportunities early, but my concern with Silva is as this fight goes on, I really don't trust her. And I absolutely trust Maryna Moroz more. So I'm going to take Maryna Moroz here to win this fight. I'm going to say she does weather the early storm. I think she can win minutes in terms of the striking and landing more volume. I think she can win minutes, getting this fight down to the mat. We've seen Silva stuck on her back. And as long as she avoids that armbar from guard, as long as she avoids that big shot, which, like I said, Moroz has never been finished, which I think is very important in this matchup, I think she can extend this fight. And when she does, we've seen Silva tire out. We've seen Silva get finished on multiple occasions. And I think Moroz finishes her once again. So give me Maryna Moroz to win this fight. I'll say she wins it by late second round submission. Moving on, we have Gregory Rodrigues going against Denis Tiuliulin. We got Gregory Rodrigues, 31 years old, 6'3", with a 75-inch reach, 13-5, and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Denis Tiuliulin, he is 35 years old, 6'1", with a 77-inch reach, 11-7, and 2-3 in his last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds. We see that Gregory Rodrigues opened up minus 400, currently minus 355. Denis Tiuliulin opened up plus 330. He's currently plus 280. And it's one of those matchups where if Gregory Rodrigues takes the path to least resistance, takes the right path here, he looks minus 1,000 or more. I mean, Denis Tiuliulin's ground game is a huge problem at the UFC level. This guy, Denis Tiuliulin, has been finished in 4 of his losses come by submission. We saw Zhang Park go out there and just dominate this guy on the mat. Denis Tiuliulin made Zhang Park look like Khamzat Chimaev out there. I mean, it looked like it was the very first time anybody's ever it looked like the first time Denis Tiuliulin was ever on his back ever. I mean, it looks like he never trained at all. In terms of the ground game, I mean, this guy's a solid striker, and he has power, but the ground game is just not UFC caliber by any means whatsoever. We saw Zhang Park just run right through him. We saw him get submitted in the second round in his debut. So Gregory Rodrigues has incredible jiu-jitsu. This guy is a high level black belt, and when he does go to it in the UFC, he has looked very good doing so. He even fought Zhang Park, and his grappling looked incredible. It was one of these transitions where he just took the back. I mean, this guy's grappling is very good. The problem with Gregory Rodrigues is he just doesn't use the grappling as much as he should at all. I mean, this is a guy in Gregory Rodrigues who's going out there and standing and banging with guys, which, I mean, it hasn't worked out for him a lot of times. This guy, Gregory Rodrigues, has been knocked out on several different occasions. He's been knocked out 3 times. By guys like, Jordan Williams. I mean, this guy, Gregory Rodrigues, gets hurt in about every fight. So, why wouldn't he go out here and take down Denis Tiuliulin and dominate him and finish him? Because I think if he takes him down, the fight is over very, very shortly after. I think in terms of ground games, Rodrigues is on another planet in terms of the jiu-jitsu here in this matchup. So, I guess it all comes down to RoboCop's game plan. Is he going to stand and strike with Denis Tiuliulin? If he does that, do I still think he can win? Yeah, sure. But he could also get knocked out because Denis does one thing well, and that's brawl. That's hit hard. So it's hard to trust Gregory Rodrigues. This guy, first of all, I think he's a liar. I mean, he says he's 31 years old. He's clearly not. He's clearly not anywhere near 31 years old. So right off the bat, that's a telltale sign that you can't trust this guy. If you're lying about your age, how can we trust him to go out there and grapple? But if he does grapple, he makes this look easy. So I'll say he grapples. I'll say he destroys Denis Tiuliulin in the first 5 minutes on the mat. First round sub for Gregory Rodrigues. Gregory Rodrigues, for the love of God, take this fight down to the mat. It's can't get any easier than that. Moving on, we have Brad Tavares going against Chris Weidman. We got Brad Tavares, 35 years old, 6'1", with a 74-inch reach, 19-8 and 2-3. In his last 5 fights, Chris Weidman, he is 39 years old, 6'2", with a 78-inch reach, 15-6 and 2-3 in his last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds. We see Brad Tavares opened up minus 325. He is currently minus 260. Chris Weidman opened up plus 220. He is currently plus 275. So first off, I was not expecting Chris Weidman to return ever. I actually thought his fight against Uriah Hall might be the very last time we've ever seen him, and then obviously there was that, really, really bad, leg injury, and he's been out for a long time. I mean, he's been out for a little bit over 2 years at this point, and Chris Weidman, 37 years old when he fought Uriah Hall. Now all of a sudden he's 39 years old. I really didn't think we'd see him, but props to him. He's able to make it back to the UFC, and shout out to the UFC. I think the UFC is honestly trying to do Chris Weidman a favor because they know, Chris Weidman, he's been out for a while. He's now 39 years old and legend of the sport. Let's give him somebody who, won't probably knock him out, right? Chris Weidman, he has 6 losses, all of them come by knockout. I question his chin at this point. So yeah, let's give him Brad Tavares, who quite frankly is just knocking out anybody, right? The problem with that is, stylistically, narrative side, because obviously Chris Weidman, what's he going to look like after an injury that brutal, and 39 years old, the layout. I mean, there's a lot of, narrative stuff, but narrative aside, I actually think this is a tough matchup for one Chris Weidman, just due to the fact that Brad Tavares, he's next level tough, and I'm not worried about Weidman knocking out Brad Tavares anyway. Weidman, the last time he knocked somebody out standing was against Anderson Silva back in 2011. So it's been a very long time since that's happened. So that's not happening. But, Brad is super tough. He was the only person to take Dricus du Plessis to decision. And on top of that, Brad Tavares has elite takedown defense. And I'm talking elite. So Chris Weidman is going to try to take this fight down to the mat. And I don't think he's going to have success doing so at all. Maybe a little bit in the first round, but I really struggle to see him taking down Brad Tavares, and I really struggle to see him holding down Brad Tavares. Prime Chris Weidman, it's a completely different story, obviously, but we're not getting prime Chris Weidman, and we haven't been getting prime Chris Weidman since 2017. The last time Chris Weidman impressed me in a performance was in 2017 against Kelvin Gastelum. Since then, he has had, I think, 3 fights, and I think he's 1-2 in those 3 fights, and the one that he did win was against Amari Akhmedov, and in that fight, he looked bad. I mean, he looked like he was gassing out in the second round. Luckily for him, he was fighting Amari Akhmedov, who, has even worse cardio. So I kind of feel like this is a bad matchup for Chris Weidman. I really do. Not, narrative aside, at this point, I really feel like it's a bad matchup. So my hot take for the week is I actually think Brad Tavares knocks out Chris Weidman. I think Chris Weidman is really going to struggle to get these takedowns early. I think that's going to wear on the gas tank of Chris Weidman. And I think Brad Tavares is going to break him as this fight goes on and get a third-round finish. So give me Brad Tavares to win this fight. Give me Brad Tavares to win by third-round knockout. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be on Weidman this week. It's a massive storyline. He can come back and from an injury like that and win a fight. But they're really trying to give Chris Weidman a winnable fight here. They really are. In Brad Tavares, who has no power whatsoever. But I think it's going to kind of backfire, and I think Brad Tavares finishes him late in the third round. Moving on, we got Andre Petroski going against Gerald Meerschaert. We got Petroski, who is 32 years old, 6 foot with a 73-inch reach, 9-1, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Gerald Meerschaert, he is 35 years old, 6'1", with a 77.5-inch reach, 35-16, and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds. We see that Petroski opened up -170, and he is currently -275. My goodness. Gerald Meerschaert opened up +145. He is currently +235. So, yeah, I think these odds are pretty wide here. It's always tough to count out Gerald Meerschaert. Like, Meerschaert's just one of those guys you just don't count out ever. He reminds me of like a Paul Craig. Like, this is a guy, Meerschaert, who, his chin's not the greatest. He's a guy where he's going to be losing a lot of minutes, but when he does win, he wins in spectacular fashion, and more often than not, he wins by submission. I mean, he's live against most people to go out there and get a comeback from behind victory, which happens a lot. Gerald Meerschaert's pretty much always the underdog, and he's a very big underdog here, but this guy's grappling's no joke. 35 wins for Gerald Meerschaert, 27 of them by submission. Ridiculous submission numbers for Gerald Meerschaert here. And he's taken on, a Gracie Philly guy, Andre Petroski, which, funny enough, is Joe Pyfer, who I believe they trained together. Joe Pyfer just went out there and knocked out Meerschaert. So I feel like, Petroski's going to come in here and honestly try to do the same thing. The thing with Petroski is you take a look at Petroski and his wins, and they're not that impressive, to be honest. You take a look at his debut. He made his debut against Michael Gilmore. Michael Gilmore, he won that fight by third round TKO, and then he fights Zhang Hu, which Zhang Hu is honestly the worst fighter that's ever stepped foot into the octagon. And then he beat Nick Maximov, who's now cut, and then he beat, Wellington Turman, which is his best win. Yeah, if he beats Gerald Meerschaert, I mean, it's going to be his best win by a decent amount. Like, Gerald Meerschaert is not an easy guy to beat whatsoever. So, yeah, Petroski is weird because this is a guy that I think is very, very skilled. I've always been really high on Petroski. The striking, has come a long way. I think he's making improvements with the striking. He does throw with, like, a ton of power. Petroski throws with very bad intentions, which is why I think he might go out there and try to knock out Meerschaert in the first round, and I think he might even do that. But my concern with Petroski is in a lot of his fights, in every fight, once the fight reaches the second round, he looks very tired. I don't think his cardio is that great, but he's one of those guys where he looks physically exhausted, but he can end up going the full 15. The problem with that, though, is he does start to make mistakes as the fight goes on. He made some mistakes against Wellington Turman in the second and third round, and if he makes mistakes against Gerald Meerschaert, even one mistake against Gerald Meerschaert, and you are getting submitted, So yeah, it's kind of a tough fight for me to call. I think Petroski does have a lot of ways to win. I see why he's the favorite. And like I said, Meerschaert's going to be the underdog in pretty much every single fight he's in. Petroski can go out there, take Meerschaert down like Christoph Jocko did and win a fight over 15. Petroski could knock out Gerald Meerschaert in the first round. I think that's on the table. But if this fight does reach the second and the third round and Petroski starts, getting tired, starts getting sloppy, you can't be tired and get sloppy against a guy like Gerald Meerschaert because he will make you pay. So I'm actually going to pick a pretty big dog here in Gerald Meerschaert. I'm fully aware that Petroski can starch this guy. But if it gets extended, I think it gets very, very, very interesting. So give me Gerald Meerschaert. I'll take him to win in classic Gerald Meerschaert fashion, which is a third round submission as always. So give me Meerschaert to win this fight. I'll take him to win it by third round sub. Next, we have Marlon Vera going against Pedro Munoz. We got Marlon Vera, 30 years old, 5'8" with a 70.5-inch reach, 22-8-1, and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Pedro Munoz, 36 years old, 5'6" with a 65-inch reach, 20-7, and 2-2 and 1 no contest in his last 5 fights. We will take a look at the odds, and we see that Pedro Munoz opened up plus 145. Currently plus 155. Marlon Vera, the favorite, opened up minus 170. Currently minus 180. And this matchup is probably the toughest fight on the card for me to call. I think this is a very close fight. I'm actually not sure why Marlon Vera's favored this much. And I'm a big Marlon Vera fan. I like this guy quite a bit. I think he lost probably a lot of fans after his last performance. He went out there in his last performance and pulled a William Knight and just didn't show up against Corey Sandhagen, but that is Corey Sandhagen. But the thing with Marlon Vera, and what concerns me in this matchup for Marlon Vera, is he is a very, 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 very slow starter. Like if UFC fights were only 1 round, this guy would have like 2 wins. I mean, this guy loses first rounds like it's nothing. It is very concerning, considering this is a 3-round fight, and considering I think it's a very close fight. So yeah, Marlon Vera, just by principle, is going to lose the first round here. It takes him literally a couple minutes to wake up and get into the fight, which is a very bold strategy, but it works for him. But the problem I have is Marlon Vera, he's losing the first rounds. He's losing a lot of minutes. Like, Marlon Vera is getting outstruck in a lot of his fights. Like, his last 5 fights, he's been outstruck in 4 of those 5 fights. And, he's able to finish these guys. He's able to knock these guys down, hurt these guys. The problem with that is Pedro Munoz has never been knocked out. 27 fights, Munoz has never been knocked out. And as far as I'm concerned, Pedro Munoz has never been knocked down. So if Marlon Vera loses the first round, the second's really competitive. And I think Marlon Vera probably does win the third, because by then Marlon Vera in the third round is an animal. But is it going to be too late? I think it all is going to come down to the second round, right? And I think the second round is going to be very close. Like, I don't really see in what world Marlon Vera should be favored by this much. I feel like this fight should be just lined a lot closer. I know Munoz is getting up there in age. He is now 36 years old. He has pretty low volume nowadays, but so is Marlon Vera. Both these guys are low volume. So I feel like we're going to get a split decision type fight here, and for that reason, I'll take the dog and Pedro Munoz to pull it off, and I'll take Munoz to win this fight by decision. Next, we have Garry taking on Neil Magny. Obviously, Neil Magny stepping in on short notice for Jeff Neal. We got Garry, 25 years old, 6'3", with a 74-inch reach, 12-0, and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Neil Magny, 36 years old, 6'3", with an 80-inch reach, 28-10, and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds. Garry is a big favorite. I want to say the biggest favorite on the card, or second, I think. But he opened up minus 400. He is currently minus 370, and then Neil Magny opened up plus 300. He is currently plus 295. So the one thing I worry about with Garry, and I've said it his entire UFC career, I remember taping this guy before he came into the UFC, and I thought this guy was special. And at that point, that was a couple years ago at this point, right? Like, I thought Garry was very, very special. I thought everything checked out. He's 6'3" at welterweight. I like the frame. I like the height, the reach. I like the cardio. I like the striking offense. I like honestly the takedown, the grappling, the takedown defense checks out. The get up, everything checked out. All the boxes are checked. besides one thing, and it's the striking defense. Then he shows up against Jordan Williams. The guy's getting pieced up. I had a big bet on Ian Garry against Jordan Williams. I was not feeling good about it at all. He was getting outstruck by Jordan Williams, and then all of a sudden he lands a big shot at the end of the first round, gets a knockout. That's great. And then his striking defense comes back to haunt him again in the Song Kanon fight. He was like almost minus like 700 in that fight. Gets dropped bad against Song Kanon in the first round. Loses that first round against Song Kanon, which is unacceptable. And it's because of the striking defense. Like, he leaves his chin up in the air, he backs up with his hands down. It's just something that I think he really needs to improve on. But other than that, I think he's great. I think he's a very, very good fighter. So the one thing I don't like about Ian Garry is that striking defense, potential chin issues, maybe, I don't know. But you're not going to worry about that against Neil Magny. I mean, that's not Neil Magny's game. Neil Magny's not knocking out anybody, and he never will. So yeah, I think it's a bad match for Neil Magny. I really do. I didn't like Neil Magny's last fight against Phil Rowe. I really didn't. I was close to actually betting Magny in that Phil Rowe fight, and at the time I was kind of glad I didn't, because I thought that fight could have went either way. It did go to a split decision. I'm still not sure who won that fight. It was a terrible fight, but he was going like life and death with Phil Rowe. And if you're going life and death with Phil Rowe, there's a serious problem. I think Neil Magny went like 0 for 3 on take. I mean, if you're not taking down Phil Rowe, I don't know what to tell you at this point. So 36 years old Neil Magny taking on the much younger Ian Garry. I think Ian Garry has all the tools to get this done and quite frankly make it look easy. I didn't like how Neil Magny was reacting to the power of Phil Rowe. We saw Max Griffin drop Neil Magny. This is this guy in Magny, 10 losses, 8 of which come inside the distance. I think Garry finishes this fight as it goes on. I think he's going to take his time. I think some spots are going to open up. And on top of that, if you're knocking out Daniel Rodrigues, who is just next level tough, I think he can finish Neil Magny here. So give me Ian Garry to win this fight. I'll take Ian Garry to win by 3rd round knockout. Moving on, we have Mario Bautista going against Cody Garbrandt. We got Mario Bautista, 30 years old, 5'9", with a 69-inch reach, 12-2 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Cody Garbrandt, 32 years old, 5'8", with a 65.5-inch reach, 13-5 and 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Let's take a look at the odds. We see that Mario Bautista opened up minus 450, currently minus 315, and Cody Garbrandt opened up plus 350, currently plus 265. So, when I first saw this matchup, I'm like, man, poor Cody Garbrandt. This guy can't catch a break. Now he's going against Mario Bautista, who is a guy that I'm super high on. But after digging into this matchup, I'm not so sure. Mario Bautista, you take a look at him, and what's he doing to these guys? And the answer to that is he's taking these guys down, and he's dominating them on the mat. He took down 50-year-old Guido Canetti in his last fight and submitted him in the first round. He took down the Realtor and Benito Lopez the fight before that and dominated him and finished him by submission in the first round. He took down Brian Kelleher and submitted him in the first round. He is running through these guys on the ground. The problem with this matchup is nobody has ever taken down Cody Garbrandt and ran through him and finished him on the mat. It just doesn't happen. Nobody's able to take down in control Cody Garbrandt. It's not like Cody's out there fighting bums. Cody Garbrandt's out there fighting, champions, the best guys in the division, guys like Dominic Cruz, guys like TJ Dillashaw, guys like, Pedro Munoz, guys like that. He's always fought, really, really good competition, and nobody's ever, taken him down and had success doing so. The only person to really take him down was Rob Font, and Rob Font only racked up like a minute of control time. So I don't think Mario Bautista's taking down and holding down and dominating and submitting Cody Garbrandt. I think that's not happening. With all that said, though, could Mario Bautista knock out Cody Garbrandt on the feet? Absolutely. And I got to go Mario Bautista here. I hate the line. I really do. But you got to pick Mario Bautista because, this is why. Cody Garbrandt showed up in his last fight against Trevin Jones, and I was at that fight. I was the only person that enjoyed that fight because I had a bet on Cody to win by decision. But everybody was booing. It was a terrible fight. Cody showed up not to get knocked out. He fought not to get knocked out. And Trevin Jones didn't, help at all. Trevin Jones only landed 20 strikes, but it was clear to see that, Cody Garbrandt's style has changed throughout the years because it has to. This guy just can't take a shot. So I can almost assure you guys, like, Mario Bautista is not going to come out here and pull a Trevin Jones. Mario Bautista is going to fight him. He's going to actually fight Cody Garbrandt, and I think that's enough to probably knock him out. Like, Bautista, he has solid power. I don't think, the grappling is going to be, an avenue here, but, I think you can absolutely knock him out. And if Bautista does not knock out Cody Garbrandt, he probably does enough to win, just because Cody Garbrandt, he's so low volume. Typically, like in general, very low volume, but nowadays, he's not throwing anything because he can't, because he can't get hit. So if you bet on, it's one of those things, like if you bet on Cody Garbrandt, every time he gets hit, you're going to be like, oh, oof. You probably won't even watch the fight. You can't watch the fight if you bet on Cody Garbrandt, because one shot changes the whole fight and can end the whole fight. So went back and forth on whether I think it's a decision win for Bautista. I could see him maybe mixing in some takedowns, Cody getting back up, some cage control, or I think Bautista just knocks him out. I think the more likely scenario is a Bautista knockout. I think this Bautista is very special. I think it's an interesting matchup for him. It's not a matchup where it's not like a Guido Canetti. It's not a Benito Lopez. It's Cody Garbrandt, who is a guy that has incredible takedown defense and get-up game. So we'll see how he fares with that. But I just see Mario Bautista knocking him out, just touching the chin at some point. I see it coming, and I think it comes probably early as well. Give me Mario Bautista to win this fight. I'll take him to win this fight by first-round knockout. All right, moving on. We have the co-main event. We got Zhang Weili going against Amanda Lemos. Very, very good co-main event here. And we'll start with Zhang Weili, who is 34 years old, 5'4", with a 63-inch reach, 23-3, and 3-2 in her last 5 fights. Amanda Lemos, 36 years old, 5'4", with a 65-inch reach, 13-2-1, and 4-1 in her last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds, and we see that Zhang Weili opened up minus 550. Currently minus 275. So yeah, money pouring in on Lemos here. Amanda Lemos opened up plus 400. Currently plus 235. So yeah, very, very good fight here. I am very high on both fighters. I think these fighters are great for the division. Two of the most dangerous fighters in the strawweight division. They weigh 115 pounds and they are just absolute killers. Zhang Weili is a fighter who at 34 years old, I still think is improving. I think we're seeing improvements every time she steps into the cage, which is terrifying because I think she's already very, very good, but she's adding new wrinkles into her game. She can wrestle, she can grapple, she's dangerous on the ground. We saw her run through Carla Esparza, make Carla Esparza look like she's a bum. And then Amanda Lemos, who, she's 36 years old at this point. She's someone that, is super, super dangerous early on in fights. But yeah, we got a 5-round fight here for Amanda Lemos. So I think Lemos is honestly very live to win this fight early, but I think it has to come early. I really do. Amanda Lemos has a ton of power. We saw Rose Namajunas knock out Zhang Weili in the first 60 seconds, right? Like, Lemos can land a big kick to the face. She can land a big shot and potentially knock out Zhang Weili. I think that's a viable outcome. I also think that Amanda Lemos might be able to get the fight down to the mat. If she takes the fight down to the mat, maybe she can get a sub. It's just the problem I have with Amanda Lemos has always really been the cardio. As the fight goes on, she typically slows down. She lost a third round against Angela Hill, and that should just tell you everything you need to know. So, yeah, Lemos, I think she's going to have opportunities, but ultimately, if Zhang Weili is able to survive the first 7.5 minutes, that's when I think she really starts to take over. She really starts to put it on Lemos. And what I noticed about Lemos is she is a very good hammer, but just an awful nail. We saw Jessica Andrade submit her in the first round. We saw, back in the day, different weight class, but we saw Leslie Smith break her in the second round. I think she's a great hammer, terrible nail, and Zhang Weili is a great hammer herself. I think Zhang Weili is going to probably weather this early storm. She's going to have to walk through fire, eat some big shots. Her durability is going to have to hold up here the first 7.5, 10 minutes. But, as this fight goes on, I really expect Zhang Weili to really put it on her, start landing big shots, and potentially even mixing in the grappling, the wrestling as well, and finishing this fight in the third round. So I like Zhang Weili here to win this fight. I'll say third round knockout for Zhang Weili, but Amanda Lemos is very, very dangerous. I see why money's coming in on Lemos because, she's one of the most dangerous fighters in the division. She absolutely has a puncher's chance, and her grappling is very good as well. It's just I don't like the cardio of Amanda Lemos, and I don't like the fact that Zhang Weili is still improving, and we might even see some new wrinkles in the game of Zhang Weili in this fight here. So give me Zhang Weili to win this fight. Later it goes Zhang Weili, 3rd round knockout. All right. And then we have the main event. If you guys have not already, be sure to comment down your significant strikes, the total strikes, significant strikes between Sterling and O'Malley for the contest. All right. So we'll start with Aljamain Sterling, who is 34 years old, 5'8", with a 71-inch reach, 23-3, and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Sean O'Malley, 28 years old, 5'11", with a 72-inch reach, 16-1, and 4-0, and 1-0 contest in his last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds. We see that Sterling opened up minus 220. He's currently minus 265. Sean O'Malley opened up plus 185, and he's currently plus 220. So, this matchup's weird. I mean, this is such a great fight. Like, stylistically, I love this fight. I think it's a very, very fun fight to talk about, to break down. But it's an intriguing fight to pick, though. Because obviously Sterling, what's he really good at? And the answer to that is his grappling is so good. Like, if this guy gets the fight down to the mat, you're losing the round, or you're getting finished. I mean, his control, once he gets the fight down to the mat, is second to none. So if he takes down Sean O'Malley and takes his back, I think the fight probably is going to be over shortly after. Aljamain Sterling, he's 34 years old. He's talking about, moving up a weight class. And he's been talking about it for a while now. And I keep hearing him talk about it. And I think this might be the last time we do see Aljamain Sterling at bantamweight. This guy cuts a lot of weight. Obviously, this guy has a ton of muscle. We've seen his pictures on Twitter lately. He cuts a lot of weight. The weight cut has to take some toll on him, right? And, he's going to move a weight class soon. Maybe it's after this fight. So that is something to note. I don't really like the cardio of Aljamain Sterling, to be honest. Like, in a lot of his fights, he seems to slow down as the fight goes on. Most notably, that first Petr Yan fight where I thought Petr Yan was on his way to breaking Sterling and finishing him late. Obviously, Yan landed that illegal knee, and Sterling got the DQ win. But even in the second Petr Yan fight, right, like in the 4th and 5th round, Sterling just kind of packed it in. Especially in the 5th. And he fought just to survive in the later rounds. So if this fight does get extended, I heavily favor Sean O'Malley. It's just, can Sean O'Malley last probably 3 rounds? He's probably got to last 2.5, 3 rounds here. And that's going to be hard to do. That's going to be very hard to do against a guy like Aljamain Sterling. I don't think Sterling has the best wrestling at all. I think it's improved a lot. But, I don't think he has the best wrestling. And we saw, Petr Yan kind of struggle in terms of, taking down and holding down Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley does have good takedown defense, and he does have a very good get-up game. But when Sean O'Malley's getting up, he has to make sure not to give up his back. If he gives up his back, that's probably the fight. So what Sean O'Malley needs to do in this matchup is survive these first couple rounds, stuff the takedowns, and most importantly, make Aljamain Sterling work. Make this guy work. Stuff those takedowns. Punish him for going for these takedowns. Land those big shots. Break him down. And if he does that, I think Sean O'Malley is going to be very live for a 3rd, 4th, or 5th round finish in this matchup. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't terrified of if this fight hits the mat early. I think Sterling is very live to sub him. So I think it could really go either way. Sterling early, O'Malley late, Sterling sub early, O'Malley knockout late. I think those are 2 viable outcomes. For me, though, I think I'm going to pick Sean O'Malley here. I think I'm going to pick Sean O'Malley to, if he gets taken down, get back up, make Sterling work. I don't think Sterling's going to want nothing to do with the striking. I know Sterling, did some striking with Petr Yan and Henry Cejudo, but I don't think he's going to want anything to do with the striking of O'Malley. I think Sterling's going to be shooting early and often. I really do. Because O'Malley's striking is very good. He's huge for bantamweight in terms of the height, in terms of the reach, and he packs a lot of power. So I think Sterling's going to wrestle very early and very often, and if O'Malley can make him work, stuff some takedowns, get back up, not get his back taken, I think Sterling's going to slow down as the fight goes on, and I think eventually Sean O'Malley's going to break him. Land a big shot, hurt him, and finish him in the 4th round. So give me Sean O'Malley to win this fight. I'll say he gets it done by 4th round knockout. There you have it. Like I said, I'll be talking about the Ultimate Fighter fights on Friday. I'll have all those taped and broken down. I'm pretty sure they're not going to announce the bantamweight finale until like late Tuesday, so I wanted to get this video out early, and obviously don't wait till Tuesday or Wednesday to get my prediction video out, because I already have the research done. It's been done, so I wanted to get it out to you guys nice and early there. Other than that, be on the lookout for some Dana White's Contender Series content. I believe we have 10 weeks of DWCS. We're going to be in week 2, and then week 3 the week after that, so be on the lookout for some DWCS content. And then lastly, be sure to check out dfsbythenumbers.com. I have 2 pretty big bets already. I'm going to get started on my full card betting article. I'm very ahead for this card, and I'm going to look into Singapore as well. And then I'm going to be putting out a lot of content on the website, Dana White Contender Series, all that good stuff. So check that out. Best of luck, everybody. Leave a like on your way out. Subscribe to the channel. Comment down those significant strikes. And we'll talk to you all very soon. See you later.